Good Sunday morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Morning Futures. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and today we are covering breaking news out of South Florida, where an armed man was shot and killed by U.S. Secret Service agents and Palm Beach County Sheriff deputies after unlawfully entering a secure perimeter at Mar-a-Lago earlier this morning around 1:30 a.m. last night. The man was armed with a shotgun and a gas can. No Secret Service agents or personnel with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department were injured. President Trump, at the time, was at the White House at the time of the incident. Right now, we bring in former FBI Special Agent Nicole Parker with more. Nicole, thanks very much for being here. Your assessment of what took place last night.
This is just another attempt potentially to assassinate President Trump. We know that he was not there at the time, but we are not sure of what the shooter knew at the time that this occurred. He may not have known that President Trump was not present. But Maria, a 20-year-old male, like you mentioned, approached. He breached the perimeter, and he had a shotgun and a gas can. The agents and the law enforcement officers, Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, approached him and told him to put it down. He agreed to put down the gas can, but instead he raised the shotgun into firing position, and they had to make a split-second decision. Again, as a law enforcement officer, as an FBI agent, a Secret Service agent, whatever department you may be with, when you believe that your life is in imminent danger of death or serious physical injury, deadly force is justified. And that is something that the FBI will be coming in and doing a full investigation. Again, the press conference this morning was extremely well done. It was very organized. We had different representatives from each of the agencies. I can tell you that as an agent who worked in FBI Miami, I have the privilege to meet with the special agent in charge of FBI Miami just Friday evening here in Miami, and he is buttoned up. He will ensure that there is a solid investigation into this case. They are right now sending and deploying what we call our evidence response team. They are the evidence experts. They go in and they gather the evidence in a way that is proper, legal, and we do not at this point know if there was just one individual. There might have been a co-conspirator behind the scenes. We do not know, but they will follow the evidence process as if it is going to eventually end up in the court of law. That is how we do business there. I think also it's important to know.
No, please continue.
Okay. It was important to note that the special agent in charge of FBI Miami came in and he said, look, we need anyone in the area, in the neighborhood, surrounding areas. If you have exterior cameras, please provide that footage to the FBI. And again, that number that you can call to give any sort of tips or information is 800 CALL FBI. What they're going to want to do is they're going to want to retrace the steps of exactly how this individual got there, where they came from. Obviously, this person will be fully identified. There will be a full profile done on who he was, what his motive was, his grievance. There's typically a precipitating stressor that causes an individual to do something like this. But we are aware that President Trump is in more danger than any other president. And again, this could potentially be the third assassination attempt on his life.
Right.
And there are people that are working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep him safe every day. And Melania, his wife, his children, his family, they should have the right to live safely, even if he is not present there. And so this is, again, unacceptable. This will not be tolerated. And anyone that has the idea that they think that they're going to do this, you will be faced with a severe consequence, potentially losing your life. Because when you are, raising a gun at a law enforcement officer, deadly force is justified.
Well, in fact, you have to wonder how it is that this individual was able to get as close as he was, holding a shotgun and a gas can. If, in fact, this is a potential assassination on President Trump's life, this would be the third time and the second at or near Mar-a-Lago.
Right, that will be fully investigated. Again, they will retrace the steps, how we got there, what exactly occurred. But right now, the number one thing is that the law enforcement officers were safe. No one was injured. And thankfully, President Trump is safe. He was not present. But again, they'll do a full analysis and scrub. Right now, they're going to pull this individual. They're going to pull his text messages, his social media accounts, if he was involved in any gaming, things of that sort. We're in a really dark place in our culture and society where individuals of this sort are actually praised. They're put out on pedestals and heroes. And we know that there are people that absolutely despise our president. And they have this rhetoric is so toxic and it causes people to act out. and then they lash out in violence. And they believe that they are fully justified many times to do this. That is not okay. It is unacceptable. And you will face the full consequence of the law, or even potentially lose your life if you act in this manner. We cannot have this continue to happen.
And you have to wonder how many attempts will be enough to stop the rhetoric on the left. You've got just this upcoming week expectations of protesting against President Trump and his State of the Union address on Tuesday night. Why the entire Congress, Republicans and Democrats, would not be in that chamber Tuesday night all together to hear the president's State of the Union is beyond me. But let me go back to something you just said in terms of scrubbing the background of this individual. When you go through all of that social media and those posts to try to find out who, in fact, this individual was, what specifically are they looking for? Do you expect we will then find a motive, and what was going through his mind to actually show up at Mar-a-Lago with a shotgun and a gas can? What specifically will the FBI be doing and looking at?
Right. So again, they will specifically be going through any form of communication that he had electronically, digitally, technologically. They will be going through his text messages, his phone call history, who his friends were. They will be interviewing everybody, his family members, friends, coworkers, classmates, whatever it might be, and his sphere of influence or anyone that knew him. So they'll be doing interviews. They'll be going through all of his, scrubbing all of his social media, all of his devices, his computers, his laptops. And again, one thing that's really important, I would like to know, was he involved in gaming? You know, there seems to be a common pattern that a lot of these individuals actually, you know, live in this world, and then they want to act it out and carry out the shooting in real life. I would be very curious. We have no indication that this was what happened in this instance, but there has been a pattern in many of these young male shooters. And again, we're seeing the pattern of the young male shooters being involved in this type of activity. So let's see what the FBI comes up with, but they will do a full and exhaustive case. I have no doubt in my mind it will be fully, it'll be a good investigation. FBI Miami, it's sad to say this is not their first time to do an investigation of this sort. Ryan Ruth, they just had a successful prosecution. He was sentenced to life in prison because of the shooting attempt on the golf course with President Trump. And obviously, we know that Thomas Crooks, he is now deceased. The FBI continues to, you know, work these cases, but they will have a full analysis of who this is, and that's why it's so important. They work with the profilers from the behavioral analysis unit out of Quantico. They are the best of the best, and they will get a full picture of who did this and understand the patterns, because, Maria, there are distinctive patterns that we're seeing in many of these shooters.
Do we know for sure that this shooter was targeting President Trump? I mean, it could be that he knew President Trump was at the White House at the governor's meeting. It certainly was widely broadcast. But you made an important point a moment ago. Maybe Melania was at Mar-a-Lago. Maybe his family was there. What do we know in terms of who was in Mar-a-Lago and how this person was able to get as close as he was?
That's part of the ongoing investigation. It is just beginning, and these are excellent questions that the FBI will be looking very closely at. What was his intent? What was his, you know, what were his internet searches leading up to this, you know, this crime that he committed? Was he, you know, targeting President Trump? Did he know? Did he look up that he was at a, you know, a governor's meeting? Did he know that he wasn't there? Whether he's there or not there, the investigation is going to be the same. They're going to carry this out. They're going to see. And again, we don't know where the family members are at this time, but we're in the beginning stages. The message I would like to make very clear: if you think that you're going to attempt to get close to a perimeter that you are not supposed to be around or breach, and you attempt to raise a gun at a law enforcement officer, you will face a severe consequence.
All right, Nicole, please stand by. We're going to come back to you as you work the phones, and we will be talking with you shortly, former Special Agent Nicole Parker.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.